I remember a car chase in a city where they pulled into an apartment complex and bailed fairly quickly. And of course, the instinct is, you get your shots, but you jump out and you start running along with the officers. And then when I reviewed the tape later that night, I noticed that as he jumped out, a gun came tumbling down, and was like, wow, I didn't realize it at the time, right. But it could have been bad.
Yeah. My next guest has an interesting weight on his shoulders that he's been carrying forward for about 30 years now. Worked his way from the bottom to the top on a TV series that paved the way for reality TV, but integrally approaches reality TV completely different. It isn't a modern day type of reality TV where so many parts are scripted. This gent works on the show Cops. He's actually now become the producer. So he's one of the honchos, but has spent a lot of time riding in the back seat of these cop cars and experiencing things that most of us never knew about until the show Cops came about. The interesting thing is the cultural shift that we're seeing and experiencing in the cancel culture on things like Cops, which is essentially a historical record of things that are happening organically. It's not necessarily something that has been scripted or put out there to set up a certain scenario. And as policing improves, then I think something like Cops would be ultimately one of the truest ways for us to measure how much improvement law enforcement has made over these years, and certainly over the past 5-6 years. However, there's been a lot of pushback, so it's been a difficult endeavor for them. So I had a fantastic discussion with Zach Ragsdale, who was our next guest, and I sure would welcome any feedback that you have and hope that you enjoy. Zach Ragsdale next on the Tee Cad by Uncommon Souls. All right, so it's been a while since I've actually...
How many years?
Man, since we actually hung out, because we hung out a little bit afterwards. You had gotten married and had a baby. You were still living in West Fort Worth.
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time.
So
that was a couple wives ago.
Okay. You should have been a cop.
Yeah, right.
You'd
Nurses.
be a good cop.
I didn't marry strippers, but I married nurses, which
right.
I don't know if there's much,
Oh, there's definitely a difference.
Nurses
maybe not in your case.
Nurses didn't work out so well for me.
Okay.
Stay away from the nurses.
Oh my gosh. So a long time.
Yeah, it's been a lot of years.
And a lot has come of the show and all that kind of stuff as well over the years. But yeah. I remember meeting you in the beginning, and I believe you had just moved to the area, right? You guys were filming here, but you had just moved to the area. Where initially did you grow up and come from?
Right. So I grew up in Southern California, south of LA. After the end of high school, didn't really have a plan in college. I barely went to high school. So, college was like, they're not going to make me go to that. So why would I go there?
Yeah.
So I joined the Marine Corps. I figured if I was going to do it, I was going to do the hardest one. And, it definitely straightened me out.
Yeah.
So I did my time in the Marine Corps, got out, still a little lost, hung out in Hollywood for like a year and just partied until I was like, I need to get my act together, and ended up going to school in Seattle. Late one night, watched this, I was hanging out with a lot of people that were in bands, and so I was going to be a recording artist, but just be the audio engineer, but
yeah.
I have no musical ability.
But even then,
I realized
in the tech aspect of all that.
Yes.
Even then.
Yeah. So
what spawned that?
I've always been creative. I just hadn't found my medium yet. So I, late one night I saw this commercial for the Art Institute of Seattle. They had a video and audio program. So I called it up at 3 a.m. and someone answered. And about a month later, I was in Seattle starting the program.
Oh, that's awesome.
And, with the focus of being a recording engineer, went to one of the first tours we went on was Bad Animal Studios in Seattle, or REM, a bunch of big name bands at the time had filmed. And I saw the lead engineer was looking like a ragamuffin and figured he didn't get paid very much. And I said I wanted to go the video route.
We got to make videos too.
Yeah. So I wanted to go into news. And of course, all the instructors were like, there's no money in news. And I'm like, well, CNN was big at the time. I was like, well, somebody's doing it.
Yeah.
Somebody's making money and a career out of it. So,
this is around what I'm not trying to necessarily
date me. No, I'm old, bro. I'm like 50 this year.
Oh, are you really? Congratulations.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Downside. Downside of the hill.
50's great. So this was the early 90s.
Oh, sorry.
Then?
It was 93, 95 in that time frame. Yeah.
Yeah. Great time to be in Seattle.
Yeah. It was an awesome time. Saw a lot of great bands, man. Yeah. I think I stage dived and crowd surfed with the lead singer of Jesus Lizard. So awesome. Except that, they kept crowd surfing him and dropped me and I fell on my back. But it was good times.
That's how you learn the most from those experiences, right?
That's right. Learn the most. Yeah. So anyway, I kind of focused more towards video production. And the typical route of a news photographer is that you start in some small town where you do everything because they don't have the money and the production value is really low because that's where folks go to learn. Mm-hmm. And you do a couple years in that market until you eventually work your way up to a big market like LA, New York, Seattle at the time. But I wasn't that patient. So I found the guy who had and started knocking on his door trying to get an internship. And first time he met with me, asked a lot of questions, real nice guy, but said, yeah, I've tried the intern thing. It didn't work for me. So the next week on Friday, I showed up at his office again, knocked on the door, and he answered. He was surprised to see me. He showed me his equipment and cameras and audio equipment. I was like, big toys,
Yeah.
And he still said, no, I can't do it. So I waited another week, and next Friday I showed up and knocked on his door, and I think he realized he wasn't going to get rid of me. So
he still opened the door.
Still opened the door. Well, yeah, I didn't have security cameras back then.
It's another sign of the times.
Yeah, right.
If anybody opens the door anymore.
So he ended up hiring me, and I cut my teeth there in Seattle, which was a huge step ahead. I mean, I was working for national shows like Inside Edition, Extra, America's Most Wanted, that kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
So I learned how to shoot. He really pushed me into shooting. And sent me to this program that's still, I believe, is still around. It's called National Press Photographers Association.
Okay.
And it's started for still photographers to tell stories with their pictures to kind of association to up your game, right?
Right.
Well, they also had a video portion for news photographers, and it was really about telling stories with video and sound. No reporter, no script. Right. You go
narrative,
out. No narrative. Yeah. You go out and you tell the story with the images you create, the natural sound that you collect.
Wow.
And of course I failed miserably. One of the guys who was big in the program, he sent me as a participant, and which, there's probably 20 participants and a couple hundred people observing. Right. And so one of the main instructors told me I should look for another job. That'll
incentivize
that does, yeah, right. It's just tell me I can't do something.
Yeah.
Right. Which it did. It got me more serious about honing my craft. And then I got restless and wanted to travel. And I actually wanted to shoot combat photography. But there were no wars going at the time. So my old boss found out that I was editing together a reel to try and take the leap. He wasn't real happy about it, but cops had been in Tacoma or Pierce County the year prior, and they had hired him to film establishing shots of the city. So he knew the producer at the time of Cops, and did me a favor, called him up and said, "Hey, got this kid, wants to travel." So
that's a great favor too, knowing he's going to lose me, an A player.
Yeah, he put a bit of investment into me to get me to shoot for him, for his company.
Yeah. That takes a lot of integrity to do that.
He was a really good guy. Like, I learned a lot of life lessons from that guy. One of his biggest questions was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? No one ever asked me that question before, but it's such an important question.
Yeah, especially at that age.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So it made me think. And he always had me thinking.
Who was this guy? Do you remember his name?
Yeah, Dave Ogilvy.
Dave Ogilvy? Is he still around?
Ogilvy, he is. Yeah, he's since retired, and I believe he kind of snowbirds in Arizona, and then he has a cabin in New Mexico during the summers.
That's the way to do it.
Right. Yeah. Great guy. Great guy. He calls every once in a while and just says hi.
Very cool.
I always try to tell him, I don't know if he gets it, like how important he was in my career path and life.
That's really cool to do. I've got another really good friend that's been going back and really touching base with people like all the way back.
Yeah. The people that created some change in your life or made you think.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't recognize it, and it's kind of good to just acknowledge that. And what I've realized is that when you start getting old like us, I'm a little older than you, that you go back far enough and those people aren't there anymore. Right. So you kind of have to figure out where they're at and get that going.
Well, get that. Yeah. Make sure you have that conversation so they know how impactful they were.
I think that's awesome.
For sure. And definitely I try to pay it forward, the lessons that I've learned to folks, because I'm in a position now where I'm in charge of the crews that go out and film. Mm-hmm. And I try and impart those pieces of wisdom that I gained along the way to the younger folks.
So would you say you learned in somewhat of a trial by fire? You had some experience that you had gained to that point, but it was still kind of minimal,
I was still a new photographer, and I never really edited, which was kind of a downfall for me. I could make the pretty pictures, but how it pieced together was a little difficult for me when I first started on the Cops TV show.
Right.
But yeah, I put in the work. Like they used to send all the crews to one city at the same time. And I believe at the time it was 6 or 7 crews that they were running. Okay. And a crew was a cameraman and a sound man. So at the end of the night, everyone would turn in their tape from what they shot during the day. And I would sit and watch other people's footage to learn how to shoot in the style of the show, which is very unique and very specific.
Yep.
It's the cinema verte style. It's a fancy name, but it's telling a story with your camera and just one camera. There's not 2 cameras out there. It's just you.
Right.
And so you have to learn a lot of different skills. Not only do you have to shoot the pretty pictures, but you don't get a second chance. Right. I mean, right. You're filming something you're documenting something that's happening in real time. Yeah. And there's no retakes.
Yeah.
You get it or you don't.
I was on the cusp of reality TV where there wasn't so much editing.
See,
and
you call it reality TV. And I don't, as the genre, the definition of the genre, we don't really fit in that category. I think we were no.
I mean, but you defined it then. Because
what reality TV became known as is definitely not our show.
And that's one of the things I definitely want to touch on down the line once we get past this point, because I do think that the concept of that has changed.
Right. So when you're out there and you have to wear a lot of hats. You have to be personal. I have to entertain the officer I'm in the car with. I'm in his office for 8 hours a day. That's his office, and he's not used to having somebody in his car.
Yeah.
So he's got to like me, you know. So I have to be personable. You think quick on your feet, and every call or car stop has the potential to go a million different ways. It's a dynamic environment.
Right.
So you have to be able to think your way through as it's happening, which is a very difficult skill.
And that's and I appreciated that having, I don't know if I'll even mention this in the intro or not, but you rode along with me for several, I don't know. I wasn't
probably quite a few shifts. Yeah.
Yeah. We did a handful of them, but,
I think we got 2 stories.
Yeah. And I figure that I figured out in short order that you were as good of an intuitive cop as any of the cops that I worked with. And that didn't come from just working in specific areas or trying to go, get them off their butt and actually go do some work for one, right? You can't go park under the shade tree when you got something you got to produce here. But talk about that a little bit. How did you learn? Obviously you said you had to adapt and learn to get in front of things, but there were times when, you would find something that the officers were not finding or make a suggestion to turn here or whatever. And it just got to the point, even when we met, which was, I would say, '99 or something.
Yeah,
So it couldn't have
99.
you couldn't have been in the game that long, and you
No.
were already that well versed.
Yeah, I mean, we ride with we have the best FTOs, field training officers. So, when new cops come out of the academy, they have to spend time with a senior officer to teach them how to, things to look for, how to investigate a crime, all those things. Well, we're riding with the best cops usually of that agency. And so you learn a thing or two, you pick it up, you start to notice things that you didn't notice before, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, which leads me to my next thing, which obviously, since we're talking about quite a long time ago, if we're talking about the late 90s and early aughts, that you had moved to this area and were really cutting your teeth, with the amount of drama surrounding police agencies. And I have my own opinion of what I've seen in terms of the new generation of cops. But I'd be curious to know, since you've run through so much time and during a time where there was so much change so fast, what have you noticed as some of the more significant differences between, and I mean generally, I'm not asking you to throw anyone under the bus or whatever, but how has policing changed in your eyes over the course of the last 25 years or so?
I'll tell you one thing that I find interesting, and I understand it, but I still, if you don't point it out and someone doesn't say it, you don't think about it. But new officers don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to have conversations because everything is done right here.
Yeah.
Everything is a text or an email or some technology driven where it's not face to face.
Interesting.
And some departments have had to overcome that, which I think it's funny, is that in the academy, they'll take recruits to the mall for a day and make them talk to random people all day long to get that skill of being able to talk to people. Because so much of law enforcement and patrol, going on calls and dealing with folks that are, probably their worst day of their life. Mm-hmm. Emotions are high, things are escalated. They have to learn how to talk to people. Yeah. And you have to be able to talk to people and understand and empathize with their situation while also doing your job. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a huge change that I find.
And that's really where a lot of the problems are solved too. It's just a matter of being able to empathize and then calm them, divide people, and then start doing your interviewing process instead of jumping straight into an interview process and being the robot. And
right.
And now with the animosity that a lot of people have when you show up, it's even more important to establish relationships and those conversations and stuff ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it is, I would hope you think it's reparable at this point. Is that one of the things you think that we could do? And if there are other things, what would those be in order to kind of reestablish public trust, for cops in general? I know, I'm speaking to a person who I consider as much a cop as anybody, even though you're not a cop. But I think your perspective is interesting because you're not actually a cop too. So you have that perspective that you bring in and out of that kind of work.
I think my perspective is interesting in that I have seen law enforcement all over the country. Whereas if you're a cop, your department, your agency. Yeah. You don't have a lot of exposure to other agencies and the way they're doing things. So that may be the only unique perspective that I have, is that I get to see it across the country. And to your question of what can law enforcement do to bridge this gap that's been such a huge divide in the last few years, it's just become worse. Honestly, I don't know. I think it's a two-way street for sure, right? I think Absolutely. Law enforcement are implementing the changes that people are asking for, screaming for, clamoring for. They're implementing those changes, and they're doing the work to try to reach out to the community, but the communities have to do the other part. They have to meet them halfway. Mm-hmm. And like any relationship, both people have to want to be involved. Right. And I think law enforcement does want to be involved. That they don't want the public to hate them. Right. Imagine your job, the accountant, right. Everyone hates accountants. Would you really want to do that job anymore? That's the problem that I think most agencies are dealing with, is that because it's been such a negative spotlight on law enforcement, that nobody wants to do that career anymore.
And a lot of it, to me, seems to be the outliers, which obviously, as fast as communication travels these days, when you have a buffoon, and I mean, there are millions of moron cops like there are millions of moron any other fill in the blank. As soon as you get large numbers of people, you're going to have the ones that screw the pooch, right? And those are the ones that are certainly garnering a lot of the attention. Part of the old school issue that I used to see, even when I came on early, was that there was, when people talk about the blue line and the brotherhood where nobody will tell and all that kind of thing, that came in historically. That came in from a time where it was inappropriate, and it just kind of carried through. But I find a lot of the dissension is forcing them back into that situation where they feel like the only people that appreciate them are themselves, and it kind of makes you, come together in a newfound way, even stronger than before. But I'm also, having spoken to hopefully the good cops, that we speak to, certainly on this show, or the friends that I have, are absolutely intolerant of the buffoonery. So I wonder if you've seen, you had to have experienced some of the ones that you wrote out with that you're like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to testify to this? And where that might be the vast minority that you see, but you've got to also understand the scope of, this is the scope of people that we're working with on every day. And it's a luck of the draw who you call sometimes.
Me personally, the number of officers who probably was, worried about it, just wouldn't ride with them again. That's not my. I certainly don't want to highlight people that. Man, this is tough. This is a tough subject, man.
Yeah. Well, I know, and I know you're talking in generalities, but what I'm talking about, if you've ridden with cops for 30 years, then it would be more than believable to think at least once you ran across somebody that you felt really uncomfortable about. And I'm not trying to get you to get into detail, but
right.
So again, I'm not. It's an observation.
Part of this problem is it's not. Is it Chris Rock about the airline pilots? My girlfriend brings it up every time I say it. But yes, people are human, right? Law enforcement officers are human, and you sometimes have bad humans. Right. It happens. But I can tell you, over the 24 years that I've been doing this job, I have a lot of friends that are cops, all great people with lives, hopes, dreams, families, loved ones, and a career that they don't want to lose. Yeah. They're good people. And it's difficult for me to watch the overgeneralization and negative stereotypes being placed on a group of people in a profession. Because it is a profession. People go into law enforcement to genuinely to serve their communities and the people in that community.
Yeah. And that's the other side of the advantage for you also, because you also have had the privilege to work with a lot of the best.
Yeah.
So you would see less than a percentage of, the bad ones anyway. Have you noticed, just since I know a lot of the time that you guys have written out, or your staff or whatever, have you heard more about cops wanting to eradicate, the idiots that are essentially, the 1% that's creating this drama around the other people that are trying to do well?
Yeah, of course. I think that's always been the case. Certainly those aren't the stories that. This is a tough part because. The news are just as much tied to ratings as a show like Cops.
Of course they
are. Right?
Yeah,
so only the sensational things make the news.
Right.
But not the 1,000 acts of good acts that officers do on a daily basis, including not tolerating folks that don't belong being police officers. So,
and it'd be boring to say, look, this is one that we thwarted the situation and nothing happened.
Right.
Listen to him talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's not going to make the top of the news.
Right. So people aren't aware that all these things happen on a daily basis. But, that's just how our news works.
So have you tried to incorporate more of that consciously? Try to incorporate things that highlight some of the smaller things that are still obviously it has to have entertainment value, and that's no fault of your own or anyone else's. Some people are going to just turn it off if it's not entertaining.
Right.
But
Stories. That's what we do. Is we tell the stories of law enforcement from their perspective, right? From riding in the patrol car with an officer and filming the things he or she encounters in a day. Most times they're not what we would be able to put together as a story because it doesn't have a beginning. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And stories are characters. So the officer definitely being one character and whoever they're helping or arresting being the other character. And they, the characters have to be entertaining or engaging enough that you'd want to watch, right?
Right.
I'm not sure where we started with this,
well,
but
I was
into
just
explaining
curious,
this,
I was,
in this deep
curious if
intellectual
there's
level.
something specific that you guys try to capture
right.
that is less dramatic, but more important to kind of envelop the role.
So I guess the point of that is that we capture what's there. We don't, look for certain kinds of stories. We ride, typically 5 nights a week in a city for 8 to 10 weeks. And if something happens and we film it and it has all those, elements to be compelling and interesting, then it's a story. Whether that be a car chase or someone complaining about their neighbor's kittens running close to a road. I mean, anything that's entertaining. So it's not anything.
It's not so contrived.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Tell me a little bit more about how you feel reality TV began, because I feel like it was foundationally a reality TV show because by definition, you're filming reality. And I know that it's kind of digressed into something else. Talk about that a little bit, about how you view this and what you're doing now compared to what you used to do, perhaps, and the way you shoot stuff.
Right. So Cops, when it started, there was no genre for Cops. So for Emmys, there was no category. We've been nominated a few times, or the Cops TV show in the very early years when it was new and shiny. Mm-hmm. But there was no category for reality TV. And it John Langley, the creator, came up with this entirely new style format of show that nobody had seen before. And it developed out of a writer's strike, I believe in the late 90s. And Fox was a brand new network. And that's kind of the history of the show. Mm. Fox was a brand new network, and they were trying to, they're competing with ABC, NBC, CBS, the behemoths. And so they were edgy, and they, any kind of content that was different to draw viewers from the big three. And John pitched this idea to Stephen Chow, who was a little uncertain about it. Definitely piqued his interest, the sizzle or the proposal of it, and greenlit it. And then that's when Cops started. But it was out of the writer's strike because they had no content, because they had no writers producing sitcoms.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so here's a show where there's no writers, no actors, no sets, didn't need the folks that were out on strike.
But you still have somebody, there's got to be somebody. Well, first of all, those all get run through the departments too. Like before you have to get certain levels of approval for running things. But there's also got to be some kind of back of house approval of, it's branded content. Like you said, you shoot it a certain way and everything else. So right. You run it through somebody, right? That expects a certain format or certain types of content.
Right. Well, if you look at the pilot for the Cops TV show, it doesn't look anything like what the Cops TV show looks like now. And I think there was some growing pains in the beginning, like season 1, season 2, they did this where they were trying to juxtapose the officer at work, and then they would follow him home and film. I think there was one officer or deputy playing their drum set.
Yeah, I
offside.
remember,
Yeah, like, and it just didn't really work. But then eventually it kind of, there became a format for the show, and it's a pretty set format at this point. 30, we're getting, season 34 seasons of Cops. It's, usually there's an establishing shot of the city or county that you're in. There's the cop car driving past, cut to the officer. We call it cop rap, where the officer talks about why they became an officer or any number of things about themselves. It's a very short intro where you get to meet the character, the person that you're about to spend the next 6 minutes with.
Right.
And then it goes into what the call is that you're going to, and then arriving. And then all that is what it is.
And a lot of those questions are prompted, I noticed too, right?
Which ones?
In terms of the interviews, to get them to speak about kind of where they're from or what they're about or whatever. Prompt a few things. Or
it is probably the hardest thing for an officer to do, the cop rap, the talking about themselves.
Yeah.
Because everything else that we film them doing are things they do every day. It's their job, right? And it's amazing that usually after the first call with an officer that you've just ridden with, they forget you're there. Totally forget you're there because they're just doing their job, and the way we move and stay out of the way, unobtrusive. They just forget we're there. That's the point of that. I get kind of lost in the long.
Well, and again,
long.
so how has it?
So reality. So after the show kind of got its format, then, and I don't know what prompted the other reality shows other than probably the cost. You could get people who wanted to be famous to participate in these shows, and not have writers, you had a little different production staff where it's loose. What reality is known as today is scripted. It's loosely scripted, and it's put people who are not paid actors into situations to film. And most reality shows probably shoot their entire season within 3 weeks. Cops, we still film a season in about 8 to 9 months. That's how long it takes us.
Wow.
Because we're not making anything up.
Right. You have to spend the time to let things happen as they do organically.
Yep.
So
that's a big difference. There's no script. We film it if it's there.
Right.
And, to what we were talking about earlier is that, law enforcement has evolved. Like when I first started the show, it was different. There's different for a lot of reasons. With technology, the narcotics game changed, right? I mean, you worked narcotics for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It was drug houses. People stood on corners and sold drugs, or known areas where people could go to buy their drugs. And then technology came in, cell phones. Hey, meet me at the Walmart and do the drug deal. It's no longer was it a set location,
right? Which
law enforcement had to adapt and still try to prevent the flow of drugs in their communities.
Yeah.
So a lot of things have changed, but we're documenting the change. And if you look at shows from, late 90s when I started to now, they look different. Officers still have the same amount of compassion, same amount of, I look back so I get a lot of requests, because the show's been on so long, of guys that were on the show in the first few seasons, first 10 or so, are retiring now. And they want to show their stories at their retirement parties.
Oh, okay.
And so I ended up watching some stuff that, was way before I worked on the show, and stories. And it's fascinating that officers are still the same people. They're still caring, genuine. I see the same threads in the stories from today as I do from back then.
But format wise, it's obviously changed. But is there what types of other mannerisms change over time? Is it
the haircuts changed? Haircuts changed, and the mullets were certain time frame. You saw the mullets and the vehicles. Vehicles are getting a lot smaller. Harder.
Tattoos used to be faux pas.
Faux pas was the tattoos. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you got guys with sleeves all over the place. It's like almost you're not cool if you don't have that taken care of.
Right. Now, some you'll notice that the agencies still have policies against it, but they still hire folks with tattoos, but they just have to wear a sleeve to cover them.
Yeah, it's just a lot more widely accepted. I mean, it's interesting to see how times change, what was acceptable then socially and what's acceptable now, because law enforcement is such a highly regarded profession that you always have to be the high and tight version of society.
Well, I mean, you want to. I understand why the tattoos were forbidden back then, because you want to present an air of legitimacy when you show up as an authority figure to a call where you have to make some decisions that some folks aren't going to be happy with.
Right. But culture has changed in quite a bit, because you run into some very normal, responsible people who are tatted head to toe. It's a thing that's become more accepted. Yeah. So it's interesting to watch that transition happen over those short amount of years.
I'm just glad the mullets are gone.
Actually, mullets are coming back.
Australia. They're big in Australia, I've seen.
In Australia, they are?
Mullets are that's the thing in Australia.
Dude, it's coming back here too. I hate to tell you. Just get ready.
I want to have enough hair by then.
Yes, you do. Come on, you can grow it. You would look awesome with a mullet. So tell me a little bit about what projects are you working on currently that...
Currently, well, my sole responsibility is Cops TV show. And right now I'm prepping for the production of season 35. I had to hire a couple new cameramen, a bunch of new sound guys.
No interns?
No interns.
You can't tolerate interns either?
It's not, we don't have a place for them.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, we have had interns in our office in Santa Monica, but, no, it's just we're super lean, and
yeah,
there's not a whole lot to production. So I said the cameraman or the crew, when they go out, they're a team and they're responsible for so much. Of telling the stories. I usually hire from local news because those guys don't get paid anything, and they work. They hump that camera all day long and tell stories all day long.
Yeah.
So I usually find some pretty good talent out of local news to bring to the national level and train them how to shoot our show, which is a whole process.
How long does it take to get someone acclimated to where you feel comfortable?
Till they can shoot the show the way it's supposed to be shot and totally get it, a year.
Oh, wow.
It's a huge investment.
So do you have, are they riding along with another two-man team?
No.
That's almost impossible to do, right?
Yeah. So when I was a cameraman back then, I spent a lot of years training cameramen that would come on the show and how to shoot the show. We call it night school. So at the end of shift, like I used to do on my own, would go look at everybody else's tape to try to figure out how to shoot the show the way it was supposed to be and get around certain situations. I would sit with them, a new cameraman, and go over their footage and listen to excuses about I was like, why'd you make this move? Like, well, there was a palm leaf in the street. Like, roll the tape back, and then show the walk up and go, yeah, I didn't see that. But it really is difficult as a new cameraman when you come to the show, because you have to pretty much unlearn everything you learned to be a good cameraman out in the regular video world and learn this whole new style.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And it's a little bit of mental beating, especially if you're really good in the other world.
You would think that someone that's aspiring to learn editing or even sound or camera work, this would be a fantastic gig for somebody.
It is, but like that was one of the things I encountered when they would hire a new photographer, and I'd have to sit and work with them, is that you get a lot. And then even now, as hiring photographers, is they watch the show and go, oh, I could shoot that, because it's shot so well that it looks easy. But it really isn't.
Yeah, it's a lot of things like that.
Yeah. And so you get people that come and then just can't do it. Because it is more than just the one piece of shooting pretty pictures. You have to shoot the style, all those other, be able to put the story together in your head, make sure you have all the elements to tell the full, complete story, because you don't get that second chance.
And also be out of the way and still get the right angles and the right shots in a ever-changing environment.
Yeah, there's patterns, though. I mean, definitely a car stop usually works the same way. And so you look for those patterns, and it helps you anticipate what's going to happen next. And then the rest comes with experience to know what's probably going to come next. The next question, it's always on a car stop, it's driver's license, registration, and then you're just trying to ID the person. So that's personal information we'll never use. Gives me a chance to reset my shot without having to be smooth about it and get ready for the next thing, which is going to be the questioning into.
We step out.
Where are you coming from? And then when they step out, you do it enough times, you know where to move to not be in the way, to get the shot, to make it a full flowing, continuous story. I mean, John Langley used to have this, I believe he had a reward for anybody who could film the show, like film a story without a single edit.
That would be cool, because that'd be...
One guy came close.
Really?
So a story back then was like 7 minutes, 10 seconds. And I believe he went 6 minutes and maybe a little bit of change before he got cut. It was actually happened here in Fort Worth.
Really?
Tony Maldonado.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a car pursuit, foot chase, tackle the guy, walked him back to the car.
There was even a chase and he still stayed on.
Stayed on. 6 minutes.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. But
Well,
that's
Tony-
but that reward, that idea that's the idea of the show, is that you don't need edits. You're filming what's happening in a way that's visually pleasing.
Yeah. So all that said, there has to be an enormous amount of stories that you've kept in the vault too. Are there any like funny stories that either resulted from something that maybe didn't make the cut, or just something that happened that wasn't even on a call, or whatever? There's so many things that can happen behind the scenes and everything else. Or was there something that, escaped narrowly with your life or anything like that? That you can share without, I mean, details obviously, but no names or anything like that, right?
I don't know. It's like asking any couple, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen? You're like,
A lot.
yeah, like I wouldn't even know where to start to tell you the craziest. I mean, like it's interesting when you get a new sound man. I mean, I've been in so many car chases that like my adrenaline doesn't go. It probably does go up, but it's controlled. Like it doesn't excite me anymore, which is sad. But that yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, those crazy intense situations, I've learned to be calm. And if you get someone new that this is their first car chase and they're just bouncing around the back, sound guy bouncing around the back seat going, oh my God. And you're like, we're just going to a call. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Trust me, this thing tops out at like 125.
Yeah. You're fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just been a lot. Yeah.
But nothing sticks out like that was hilarious or that didn't make the show. Or what about a narrow escape? There has to be a narrow escape where you thought, hey, this is normal, and then all of a sudden somebody's launching rounds from somewhere that you didn't expect or whatever. Do you recall any of those?
When things are happening, you don't really. It's tough when you're filming the show. Like when you're a camera, and that camera, it can. And this is not just on cops, it's anywhere. It can get you in trouble because you have a false sense of danger or reality because you're viewing it through a lens. So you're somewhat removed from the realities of your situation because you're looking at it through a lens. You're watching it on TV, just a very small TV. Mm-hmm. And there's been times where after I filmed something and reviewed the tape, I was like, oh. I remember a car chase in a city where they pulled into an apartment complex and bailed fairly quickly. And of course, the instinct is, you get your shots, but you jump out and you start running along with the officers. And then when I reviewed the tape later that night, I noticed that as he jumped out, a gun came tumbling down and was like, wow, I didn't realize it at the time, but it could have been bad.
Yeah. And anyone could miss that too. Cops can miss that too.
Yeah.
And I think cops think like that a lot too. And it's probably like that with nurses. And I hate to bring back that trauma to you.
Nurses, man.
But the same type of thing. I would see a traumatic event if I was not on duty or as I am now, versus when you're actually in a professional capacity where you have to take control of the situation and try to figure out where people need to go, and you've got body parts strewn out, but you're not thinking about that. You're no longer focused on that. You're focused on accomplishing the tasks that that follow this situation.
Right.
So I can totally relate to how that would be, which is why I know you have a bunch of these.
I have. Yes.
So, but I mean, because I understand that too, that plus you get good at it. So you're able to stay really close to the action and you also have less of a periphery. So, talk about tunnel vision.
Well, some respects, because I think like, so there's a whole, I just read this book last year called The Emotional Survival Guide for Law Enforcement, written by, his last name's Gil Martin. Amazing stuff. You know, I can't believe I've been doing this job this long and hadn't come across that book, because this guy's been around for years. And it really breaks down, it helps you understand officers in their career, the entire career of being an officer, and some of the mental aspects that go into it. He talks about, you know, like as a patrol officer, when you go into shift, most people operate in this plane in the middle, right, on their daily lives, right? But when you go in on shift and you're working, you're way elevated above this plane. You're able to make complicated decisions under high stress environments. Your peripheral vision becomes wider. You're just on high alert. You're just hyper vigilant. But the downside of that is when you leave shift, and when there's a reaction, there's always an opposite reaction. Right. You come home from shift, and he calls it the magic chair, where you just kind of hit this low. So you're no longer operating in this middle where everybody else is. And I think the same happens for the crew members who do the same thing, myself included. Yeah. At a certain point, you kind of look at that and go, wow, yeah.
But it hasn't killed you yet.
No, not yet.
So
I work in front of a computer now, so I very, very rarely do I ride in the police car.
You're the boss.
The boss.
So
yes.
How long do you think this is going to continue? I know there's been a lot of outcry about some of the episodes, and most of it just has everything to do with how culture was 30 years ago and everything else, which
right.
is
well, so
it's kind of a recording of history.
I will give you something that's interesting that I find when approaching agencies, because, you know, I have to reach out to an agency and say, hey, you know, we'd like to feature your agency this year on Cops. And what I've started to realize is that folks that are in the command staff now, they remember the show from the early years, which, you know, looked a whole lot different. Police work looked a whole lot different.
Right.
And so their frame of reference for the show is early 30 years ago, policing.
Interesting.
And because they don't watch the show now, they do the job. They're the chief of police, they're whatever. So to help them understand, like, we are only documenting what's there. Like, and if police works change, we're documenting that change as well.
Right. Which is important.
But it's difficult to overcome if your frame of reference, because you're right. I mean, I believe that I'm accurate in saying that John Langley, at one point, I've heard him say that, you know, what's the academic where they go back and look at civilization, that we have 30 years of documented of the change in law evolution of law enforcement, right? I can't remember the academic profession that would look at that kind of thing, but you can see it.
Yeah. And it's kind of important to look at it and document and understand how because it's a documentary essentially.
I think it is important, you know, like for the agencies that allow us to come film, and their citizens have an opportunity to see the changes they've implemented that their citizens don't know are being implemented. All they're seeing is what they see on the news. So it is an opportunity for folks to see that there is change in law enforcement.
Especially the agencies that used to participate, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to approach it too.
Right. I mean, there's always, you know, two sides of the coin. Oh, it's going to show our city has crime, and, you know, it's going to be bad for the look for our city. People aren't going to come visit. I'm like, every city has crime.
Yeah. And that's always been there. That's always been the barrier you have to get past in order to convince them to do it, right?
For the most part, I mean, it really is. It's you know, allow the citizens to see it. This is what we do. We tell the story of what's happening from the officer's perspective. And folks can not have to, I mean, really, folks really should go do a ride along. If you really are concerned about your law enforcement, you know, your cops in your town or cops in general, go do a ride along.
Yeah.
Step in their shoes for a minute and see.
Yeah. That's an important thing. So do you have anything else that you wanted to add to any of this stuff? Because I mean, I've drawn a lot out of you. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, right, like you said, but
I don't know.
I think you have a fantastic perspective, and it's interesting to see how the career. Congratulations, by the way, about your career has come from 0 to 100, and it's cool the way you did it. It's a bootstrap kind of career. You're at the top of something that you've accumulated a lot of experience and knowledge in because you've had the hands-on experience. You're not just a guy that got put there and everything else. So
right. I mean, and I, you know, for me, the guys that work for me, like in part of paying it forward and this type of leadership that I learned from the Marine Corps and beyond is that, you know, I have some credibility because I did the job. I was a cameraman on the show for 13 years. I know what it's like for them to live in a hotel room, be away from their family and friends, to tell these stories and to do this job. It's difficult. So I do everything I can to take care of them, to make them comfortable, and, you know, the crews in the cities that they're in, so that, you know, they're not miserable.
Yeah. Do you find that people are less tolerant now than they used to be? I know you talk about there's some fantastic things about this new generation, and but there are a lot of things that people are critical of, and it is what it is. I mean, a lot of the new generation are kids that we had, so we can't really complain about it. But is it a lot less? I mean, we were infinitely less tolerant than the people that feigned the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So are you finding that people now, cameramen or law enforcement alike, are a little bit less tolerant of uncomfortable or different, more complicated circumstances, that they're less tolerant of things than?
No, I think cops have to, they all, you know, as your job requires you to deal with complicated circumstances.
Yeah. Well, maybe not complicated as much as just, like I said, the comfortability factor is one. So maybe specifically about, you know, the cameraman that you hire, is it more difficult now to do what you did because you would just nut up and do it and deal with it? Is it more of a
No, I mean, I think, you know, for the crew or the camera folks, I mean, as a cameraman, so I always kind of refer to cameraman, you know, it's a team. It's always a team, but there's a team leader, and it's usually the cameraman, right? We're a small group of folks. I mean, I can probably, I know or know of everyone who's worked on this show in 30 plus years. Know them personally, worked with them, or they were just a little bit before my time, and I never met them, but know of them. So I try really hard to try to find people who just want to work and want to better their craft of telling stories. Yeah. Because for me, that's important, the quality of the show, the quality of the stories that are told.
And it's, you know, there's a penance to that. That's why I was asking. So that's interesting. And it's great to know too, that people are just still willing to do it, because it's kind of an old school process. There's not a lot you can do to make the circumstances better. No, you got to be out for long periods of time, and you've got a hard job. You're lugging around heavy equipment. The weather's never comfortable, and it just is what it is, though, right?
It is, but the relationship and bonds that you make with the cops that you work with is amazing. I mean, I have friends all over this country that I may not ever see again, just because they live so far away, and I don't, know that I'll have the occasion to be in their area again, but I still keep up with them. I mean, there's a guy I worked with from Pittsburgh who's since retired, moved on to CID, but he's in Georgia, and I'm close to maybe getting an agency that's near in his area. I definitely want to go see that guy. Yeah. Because we're friends, man. And we talk all the time. Yeah. The cops are good people. Really. They are. They're no different than any other human walking the planet. They put their pants on the same way you do every day. And I've had nothing but really good experiences.
Well, that's a great way to tally this up, because that's what we try to show here is the human aspects of these things that either get a bad rep or unnecessarily good rep. But the bottom line is that everybody's trying to do their best. And as long as we can learn from other people and your perspectives from folks like you, man, I always appreciate you being a friend and putting up with me long enough to come in here and answer the questions.
I said that, folks I've known for years. I mean, I haven't seen you for a long time, but it's not like we hadn't met. There's one thing I do want to tell you that I do use. So one of our stories, it was a car stop on the highway, traveling westbound in the late afternoon on 20, right? So I use that particular in the car as training for my new cameraman because the windows were so dirty that when we hit the glare, I couldn't see the car out in front of the patrol car because the windows were dirty.
It was ridiculous.
Right? But
so clean those windows before
clean the windows before you get in that police car. That's like a huge lesson.
I'll tell you another funny story that's off of that same exact stop is that even though there's not editing, but there are things that are taken out for purpose of time and everything else.
The editors don't really edit; they more collapse time.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the parts that were collapsed on that particular episode ended up showing an illegal search and seizure, which they in turn used in our own academy to show what an illegal search and seizure looks like. I thought that was funny because he had a lot of rookie cops coming out and saying, and it wasn't, it wasn't a big deal, but I was like, well, yes, obviously there's more to that story. There's more to the other episode story. It just is what it is. You only have so much time.
Another thing you'll notice when you watch the show is rarely do you see Miranda being read. Not that it's not being read. It's just, for us in telling the story, it's not an important piece. Sometimes we use it because we need some, because we are editing to a certain time.
Yeah. They burn in time now.
Right.
Yeah.
So just like that piece that it wasn't an illegal search, but in the edit, the piece that made it not.
But that's not the purpose of the show either. And like I said, it's neither here nor there. I just thought it was funny because somebody had made mention that they showed that in the academy class. It was a guy that used to work for me. Went to the academy. He's like, I watched you do an illegal search. Oh, it wasn't an illegal search, but whatever.
Right.
So I
but they used as a training tool.
Yeah. Hey, like I said, it's being put to good use.
It's amazing. Some departments call and they're like, hey, we'd like to use a story or two for training. I'm like, what do you want? I'll give you the catalog. I mean, if it helps train officers to be better, absolutely use our show.
Yeah. It's all for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate your time.
No problem, man.
See you
Good seeing you.
Keep on keeping on the golden age caffeine. It's some sidewind you're on. Another situation. See the road from the stripes with the lights coming on. Came upon a catastrophic dream. Another dark page to turn. Another situation. They can't have your heart to find. To pursue once has just another time. And every wish ain't hope till the soul is mine. Keep your muse on loop till your angel cries. A sunlit path you're on, obscure majestic trees. Can't see which way to turn, just take a new direction. See the road from the side, your old strides wherever long. Free to think about the way it's supposed to be. It's another dark page to turn, it's another situation. What's never seen will go untold. Don't talk about it. What one can